Alright, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. In this video, I want to have a little fun. I want to see if we can get this cat D337F genset running. Now, I don't have a lot of backstory on this unit, but what I do know is it was removed from a hospital on Long Island about 10 or 12 years ago, and it's been stored in a barn since that time. I don't know why it was taken out of service. I don't know if there are any serious issues with the unit. I do know it turns over, which is good for things that I seem to acquire. Usually everything's locked up, but it does turn over. Seems to have a little bit of compression. Now, really what I want to do is see if we can get the engine running today. I know the generator end isn't going to make juice. We're not going to be lighting anything up. We're not going to be load banking it or anything today, and I'll go into that in a few minutes. But let's take a walk around the unit. Alright, let's take a little walk around this thing. I think we're going to start over here at the nameplate. So this is the electric set nameplate for the total unit. So it's a D337F. It's a 12208 3-phase genset. It is not reconnectable. It's only 4-wire, 4-lead, 1800 RPM. It's rated at 150 kilowatt. Now that's its continuous rating. Somebody has stamped, I'm guessing the factory did this, its standby rating, which is typically a 4-hour rating, is 175 kilowatt. And then we've got some exciter information and a wiring diagram. Not much to the wiring diagram since it's not a reconnectable genset. And there's the gen serial number. From here, let's move on to the engine data plate. Oops, sorry. We got a D337F, 5 1/8 inch bore, 6.5 stroke. Got our loaded RPM, 1800 of course, for 60 Hertz on a 4-pole generator. No load at 1863. And there's our serial number. If anybody can give me a specific build date, I would appreciate it. So like I said, I don't have a whole lot of backstory on this generator. It's been stored for a long time, not been run, and I don't know why it was taken out of service. What I do know, and one thing I mentioned before, is the generator end is missing a major component. And some of you can probably guess what that is, if you're familiar with these old cats. And that is the exciter generator. There should be a DC generator, exciter really, sitting on the top of this box here, and there's the mounting bolts are still here, and this little pipe cap's covering where the wires from that exciter would enter the main box here. Got a couple meters here, amp meter and a voltmeter, selector switch to select what phases you're monitoring on your meters. Missing something here, don't know what that was. Now, it's very interesting to me to think of the history of this genset for a few different reasons. And let me cut real quick, and I'm going to bring up another something to show you. Okay, with the generator, I received this plate with these two tags on it, and this controller. So this would be the automatic engine start controller. Now, we're not going to worry about this right now. However, this is what's interesting me. So let's take this and walk over to the generator end. And I pulled this cover plate off with the volt and amp meters on it. And this here looks like it originally took the place of this box right here. Let me set it down. That cover plate down there, I think originally took the place of this box and was mounted back here, covering the voltage sensing transformer. So, and I'm surprised that it survived, because it was just loose with the unit. can see it looks like it's been laying in the dirt. It's all rusted up pretty good. But anyway, it's got critical information regarding the original wiring for this gen set. So we're not going to go into too much detail, but you've got the main generator here with all the output leads. You got A, they have it labeled, is the voltage droop transformer. B, which is a selector switch. D is a rectifier diode. Then here, G is the exciter generator, with and all of this here, actually just the generator end and the fields is what's missing. However, what I do have is A, and let me see what else, which I'm surprised that's still in here, right here. This is A, the voltage droop transformer assembly. Now, it seems to me that whenever this thing was moved, like the hospital was not its original installation. I think it was originally a mobile gen set, like a portable gen set. Then the hospital acquired it for standby purpose. And at that point, it was retrofitted to automatic starting. And I'm thinking at that time, the exciter was also removed and it was converted to a static voltage regulator. The reason being, there's a little cover. Actually, I have it sitting over here. I removed it. Hang on one sec. This little tin cover here, homemade looks like, little homemade tin cover, was mounted over the stub shaft on the generator end. And this is where a pulley would have originally been to V-belt drive the exciter generator, which would be mounted up here. But we're not going to go into any more. I think I've already said too much in this regard. But pretty much, we don't have any kind of static regulator, and we don't have the DC exciter generator, so we're not going to be making any juice today. But let's start getting this thing ready to run. Alright, let's get familiar with this side of the engine real quick, since this is where we're going to be doing most of the work. We got just a gauge panel here. Looks like the oil pressure gauge is leaking a little bit there. Oil pressure, engine temp and fuel pressure. The belts, they seem to be fine. We got our main injection pump, which really is a huge thing. It takes up this whole back area here. The governor housing hanging on the back. Now I've already cheated a little bit and I freed up the throttle. Throttle works, the detent works. This is how you set your rated speed here. There's a, actually, you can see there's a detent in this sector arm right here. And when this lever is all the way up, that's idle or low fuel position. And then there's see that operation there allows it to be locked in its detent. And from that point, you use these just lock nuts here, these thumb wheels, to rotate the whole assembly and set your desired speed. Being a generator, it would have had one set speed. It would have stayed there all the time. It would have started up and gone right to that speed. So, got our fuel primer pump, 2 oil filters, got our run solenoid here, which actually it gets kind of stuck at the bottom there. You have to give it a little bump to get it to free up. Fuel filters, starter motor down at the bottom there, and this is just a connection box where the DC wiring would have terminated. Got an oil pressure switch here, and then this piece of armored cable runs up to a temperature switch up here. So that would be your low oil pressure and high engine temp shutdowns. Turbocharger and air filter. So that's pretty much it. And of course we got the oil cooler sitting down here. Hopefully that's not leaking. Now, I went and I checked the coolant in the radiator and I do not see anything in the top tank. It smells like coolant in there and it looks damp, but I can't see any liquid. So hopefully it's not down in the pan. As a matter of fact, since we're rambling on about that, let's pull a dipstick out. There's some nice black oil on there. Now, you probably can't see. Let's take a walk over here where I have a rag. But you check this while the engine's running. So you got your full mark and your add mark. Check with engine running. Now, I've never seen a cat where it only has check with engine running. Most times they have a running level and a stopped level, but this one they only have running. So I don't really know exactly how much oil this thing is supposed to take. I haven't looked that value up. So if we don't get any water out and we drain the sump, I'm going to refill it to the point where it's at now. But of course we're going to be putting fresh fuel and oil filters on it. I think the first thing I want to do though is, even though I can feel this throttle moving and it springs back to the no fuel position without any issue, I want to remove this cover and see if we can access the rack for the fuel injection delivery, for the fuel delivery nozzles, not the nozzles, but the delivery valves rather, to verify that the rack moves and it's not just gonna start up and go to wide open throttle. Alright, let's remove this cover plate here. Get these thumb wheels out of the way. Gotta release the throttle first. Go. Set those aside, and we've got some lock wire here that would have been installed by Cat as a means to determine whether or not anybody tampered with the fuel settings on the engine. Just so that if you blew your engine up or cooked your turbo or something like that, Cat could come back and say, well, somebody messed with the fuel settings. Just push that off to the side now. I don't think we're going to have to get in any of these back covers. Like I said, I don't want to mess with any of the fuel settings. All I want to do is make sure the rack moves freely. That one's tight. That was being quite troublesome. And I think I'm going to have to go get a ratcheting wrench because I don't have enough clearance there for the socket or for the ratchet. It might not look like it, but I did power wash this thing before making the video. Just in an attempt to prevent excessive dirt intrusion into the system here. Oh, there we go. Wow, it looks nice clean in there. Looks like the fuel rack right there. Right there. So there's a link rod. That should be the fuel rack. Yeah. It was a little stuck at first, but it was nice and free now. Look at that. And you can clearly see the operation. Let me get you off the tripod here. Where's the governor at? Sorry, there's not a whole lot of light in here. Yeah, that's excellent. You can see everything. So you got the governor flyweight, one right there, and one hiding down at the bottom. You got, where's the handle at? Got a yoke right here. Almost looks like a throwout bearing on a manual transmission. You got the governor spring right there, so as you move the lever down, it compresses that spring. That spring resists the action of the governor weights, which is acting to move that spool right there, sorry, that spool and that yoke, which is connected to the fuel rack. So in this position with the governor spring, the handle up, the governor spring untensioned, detensioned, whatever the word you want to use, with at idle rather, when the engines are running or turning, these governor weights right here are going to act to force the rack to full closure or idle. When you rev the engine or want to increase throttle, you're increasing the tension on the spring, which acts against the force of the governor weights as they're spinning to find the equilibrium, and at that equilibrium is where the fuel rack will be. So, was that clear? That's good. I'm not sure why I'm able to rotate these. I think I shouldn't be able to. Yeah, I should not be able to if I'm correct, because they should be affixed to the injection pump shaft, which should be affixed to the timing gear train. Well, I see a couple gears down there. Maybe there's some kind of coupling in there with some backlash. Let me get a closer look in there myself. Okay, is this any more clear for you guys? I took this side cover off. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole governor operation again, but there's your weights right there. Alright, so now, I'm still not 100% sure about this, but I think the reason I can turn this governor without turning the whole engine is by design. Let me move you over here. Show you the lower governor, the injection pump gear that's actually on the pump shaft. Get you lined up here. I don't know if you can see that, but the ring, the teeth themselves are on a separate ring on that gear, and you can see that they move when I move the governor, but that nut there, which is actually on the pump shaft itself, does not move. Jeez, I can't really get a good shot here for you, can I? So, I'm going to say that's by design. Nothing looks failed there to me. But I think what we'll do, I'll leave those plates off when we start it up and observe the operation. I'm sure we're going to get covered in oil, but maybe not immediately. Alright, what's next? Let's see. We know it turns over. We know the rack's not stuck. What's next? Well, let's drain the oil out of the pan. Let's see, make sure we don't have any coolant in there. Real quick, one thing I forgot, and I'm sure all you Caterpillar guys are yelling at me earlier in the video when I called this the run solenoid. It's not the run solenoid. That's the stop solenoid. This is energized to stop, this unit. Now, a lot of old cats are like that, and I should have listened to my intuition when I started this video. I was thinking that that's probably just a shutdown solenoid, energized to stop, like all the old cats are. Well, for some reason I said run solenoid, but you can clearly see that when this solenoid pulls in, it shoves the rack to the no fuel position. So, the only power you need for this thing is to crank it up, is to turn it over. And if you had a pony engine on it, you wouldn't need any power at all. So, alright, let's drain that oil. Alright, got my oil pump set up here. Let's see what's in this sump. It seems to be just oil. We're pulling right from the bottom of the pan, so if there was any coolant in there, I think we would have seen it by now. One other thing we can look at is the inside of this oil filler cap here. That looks nice and clean. Usually if you have excessive moisture in the crankcase, that's one place it builds up. Whether that moisture be condensation or coolant leaks. Under the oil filler and bottom of the valve covers is where it always seems to collect. But I don't see any coolant there. Alright, keep going. Oh, would you look at that? It actually had genuine cat filters in it. Fuel filters and oil filters. Genuine. So, and the fuel filter housing's still full of fuel. Let's take a look and see what that fuel looks like. Yeah, definitely looks a bit old. Smells old. Yeah. Smells like old furnace oil. Set this down. I don't know if this has the bottom parts that like to fall out or not. No, they look like they would have stayed in there. A little bit of junk at the bottom, but not bad, not bad. Let's rinse that out. Got some new filters over here. Napa Specials. Now, here's the tops for the oil filter housings. When you change an oil or doing a PM on one of these engines, and many other old cats and many other old engines in general, for example, there's an O-ring seal here around the housings. Sometimes the new filters come with them, sometimes they don't. Depends on what number filter you got. This one does not come with them. So I keep these. These are actual genuine cat seals. I don't know the part number. I think it's printed on here somewhere. Oh, there it is. 6F9163. I keep these on the truck. Also, the gasket for the fuel filter housing is a 5H5601. Real common. Well, I guess not real common nowadays, but there's a lot of old cat gen sets still in service. Of course, the fuel filters don't come with that gasket. So let's clean it up and put some fresh filters in this thing. Alright, so here's where we're at. Oil filters are changed, fuel filters are changed. I've moved my pump over to this side of the engine, and I've removed the oil pressure switch. Plumbed my pump right into the oil gallery, the main oil gallery. So what I'm going to do, I flushed the pump out with some fresh oil. By the way, the oil I'm using is not brand new. It's probably got about 30, 40, or 40 hours on it. Come out of a generator that gets an annual PM. So nothing really wrong with it. So let's take a look at the pressure gauge here while I run the pump. See if the pressure comes up. Lube oil pressure. Alright. So what I'm going to do now, let's go ahead and check the level on the dipstick. I've put about 3 gallons or 4 gallons in it. See, I made a little mess there. So we're about halfway in the operating range for engine running. So I'm going to hit my pump and bar the engine over. Just kind of let some oil flow around, get the oil pump turning. Hopefully get some stuff to the top end, get the rocker shaft lubricated and rocker arms, and get most of the points lubricated. And then I think we'll make some new fuel lines, because these are looking a little rough here. Looks like it was just flexed to some copper. We'll get that replaced and throw some battery cables on it, and I think we'll be ready to attempt to start. Well, after just a minute or two of flowing oil and turning the engine over, we got a nice stream of fresh oil coming from the injection pump shaft. Good news. Yeah, it turns over nice. And I was lying when it said it's got some compression. No, it's got plenty of compression. I could barely get it through a couple of those cylinders. So let's keep going. Let's take a look at the stick again. See if we need some more in there. Yeah, looks like we're at the full mark, engine running. But we need to be a little bit over that. And then we'll be ready to fire. Well, after we do fuel lines and battery cables, that is. Okay, but we got some battery cables and fuel lines hooked up. So we're going to go ahead and prime the fuel system. Now, in order to do that, Cat has these nice valves on their older engines. So you open the bleeder valve there, and there's a tube that runs right on down, and if you don't have a pan, just conveniently spills fuel all over the ground. So we got a little pan in there. Here's our primer pump. Unthread the knob, pull it out, put a little bit of oil on the plunger, and just gonna go ahead and pump it until we get some good red fuel out of there instead of that nasty yellow stuff. There we go. Fuel and no air. That's what we want to see. So, go ahead and close that valve. And we'll pump it a few more times. We get some fuel pressure up. Oh yeah, plenty of fuel pressure now. Okay, push it down and close the valve. Fuel pressure's gonna drop, but that's fine. So she should be fully primed and ready to run. What's next? I think before we start cranking, I'm going to go ahead and pull the air filter off and find a piece of wood or something that I can quickly stick over the intake if we end up with a runaway situation. Alright, it's time to try to start her up. Fuel's hooked up, batteries are hooked up. Pulled the cover off the starter just to check the brushes, make sure they're all free. It actually looks really nice in there. Got a separate pressure gauge on the oil gallery, the main oil gallery, so we can see what the oil pressure actually is instead of just whether or not it's in the operating range. Got my block of wood here. Can slam that over the intake of the turbocharger in case we got a problem. But I think that's about it. Oh, one more thing. I just put 2 bolts on for this cover, and I got 1 bolt loose here on the other, so that if we do get into a situation, I can pull this off and have manual control over the rack. But since this is a puller fan, so the fan is going to pull the air over the engine instead of pushing it out the front. Figured we Don't want a bunch of dirt and everything flying in there if it doesn't need to. So, let me set you down. And let's give her a try. Okay. Well, damn. It's like it was never even shut down. Now that's impressive. Wow. Let's start it back up again. So, we are not able to actually stop it with the throttle. Right now it's resting at idle. We do have to use the shutdown lever. Ooh, look at that. One thing I just noticed. Look at this. Ooh, wow, that could be bad. Let me get a ratchet and spin that off of there real quick. We don't need that going into the fan. Alright, well, I got that pesky guard taken off. You know, this happens a lot with any generator, really, that I've seen in the field. These thin wire guards, new or old, they'll get cracks like that. And before you know it, the fan will eat one and it'll either tear the radiator up or create a really dangerous situation. So, let's take this cover off here, start her back up. See if we can observe the operation. Getting plenty of oil flow there. If it starts throwing oil everywhere, I'll throw it back on. Alright. residual voltage. So that's the voltage that the residual magnetism in the main rotor is able to induce into the stator. Not much, right? Doesn't matter. It's enough that my meter can get a frequency reading. So right now, we're running about 27 hertz. So, a little below 50% rated speed. So since she's had some time to warm up, I'm going to go ahead and throttle her up to 60 hertz. See how much noise she makes. I got some earplugs in, because I'm sure that turbo is going to scream. See if I can focus you in on the meter. You can't see a damn thing. That's close enough. Alright, hang on. I'd call that a successful morning. That's all I really have to show on this unit for now. See, it had 959, 960 hours on it. Seems to do pretty well. Of course, it doesn't have a load on it or anything. You know, it's barely up to operating temperature. Well, it's in the operating range. So, before I do too much more running on it, I want to put the air filter back on it. Maybe put a little stack on it, get the exhaust up a little bit. Don't want to piss the neighbors off too much. You know what? Something's sitting on the ground here. Huh. That's interesting. Take a look at that. Looks like the data plate came off of the harmonic balancer, or viscous dampener as they call it. That's interesting. More interesting to me that they riveted a plate on something that rotates, but maybe that's not the case. What was I saying? I don't remember. Like I said, that was a fun morning. Turn the meter off here. So the next step with this is really figure out the generator end. Either locate an exciter, DC exciter, or convert this thing to a static exciter. Now, I don't ever think I mentioned what year I think this is. I think it's 58 or 59. I'm pretty sure in early 1960 or 62, Caterpillar started building sets with static exciter from the factory. So this one was obviously a separate excited gen set. So late 50s, I would say. Again, with that serial number, I'm sure some people will chime in with the actual year. But hey, not a big deal. Thanks for watching.